Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Paul Edwards, author of Business Beyond Business. Paul, welcome to the show.
Paul, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you. And by the way, you have an awesome name.
It takes one to know one, I like to say.
Well, Paul, we're thrilled to have you. Are you ready to begin?
I'm ready, my friend.
All right. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Looking back at it, Paul, I'm going to say if you can find it, the presence of mind within you to not be in a rush. I have been in a rush too many times when I've published my books, and now working on the third version of my book, which is due out later this summer. I am slowing it down. I just got through round one of revising and editing the chapters, and the temptation was to pull the trigger and send it straight in. And I said, no, I'm going to do it differently this time. I'm going to let it sit for a couple days. I'm going to go back and go through it another time. So I would say if you can take your time and not be in a rush. I know this is the 21st century, but some things can't be hurried.
Absolutely. And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
You know, these days, I'm going to say it's probably a matter of a combination of confidence, personal confidence in what you have to say, and do you have the means to afford it? And it really boils down to that. Agencies like yours provide every part of this that used to be missing. It's not one of these vaulted secrets for only a select few anymore. It is widely available, but of course, there's still an investment you have to make. So I would say you've got to have confidence in your expertise and knowledge, or if you're doing fiction, you've got to have confidence in your ability to create a compelling story and characters. And I'm also going to say, especially in the nonfiction expert area, if you're creating a book more as a business card, as a symbol of credibility and authority, then you really want to do so from the vantage point of somebody who has an existing, decently successful business that can benefit from disseminating that book, so that you're likelier to get interviews and leads and inbound inquiries for whatever expertise you provide.
Absolutely. And one of the things I always tell my clients is you have to look at a book launch as a product launch. It's not just a book. It is a product that's going to be used for you, your brand, your business, and as a conduit for lead generation. And that's the biggest thing they have to realize is this is a tool that is the foundation of their business.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to, it's one of the mistakes that I made going in was I had the idea for a book, but it took me a really long time to figure out what my high ticket offer on the back end was. And so the last two times I did it, I was probing around the edges. I had some idea of it. I had this experience but I just couldn't put words to it just yet. It took me a really long time to figure it out.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
Well, the number one thing I've come to believe about strategy in anything relating to business is that the more brains you have working on the same goal, the same topic, particularly if those brains are specialized in subcategories of what you're attempting to achieve, the greater success you're going to have. So, as a practical example of this, my first book was called 10 Secrets to Networking Success. And I wasn't the only person who had input on this, but I had very few people working directly with me on it. So I did have an editor, and we edited it enough to where it flowed and it wasn't huge run-on sentences and all that. So it was decent grammar, decent English, but it was lacking tons of details, and it was lacking tons of meat on the bones, and it showed. The second time I did it is our mutual friend Rob Kosberg. In that instance, I had a lot more meat on the bones, but I also had a lot more structure to it. I had some professional advice there in terms of how to set up each chapter so that they worked together and worked in tandem off of one another. Not to mention, I had a terrific marketing team that made it an Amazon bestseller and got me TV bookings and, the cover design and all that. So I had a wonderful experience there. And I just want to go back to saying this: the more you spread all of those variables that you yourself don't know how to do, particularly if you've just got a book, right? You've got expertise in your field, but you have nothing to do with the publishing or media industry, the more success you're going to experience. So if you're going to hire, I would hire a team. That's, I guess, is the simple way of saying that.
Absolutely. Hire the experts, hire people that have systems that know what they're doing, and let them do their job.
Yes.
Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Well, in this case, I hope the audience can forgive me. I'm not attempting to make anything religious out of this, but I read the bestseller of all time every day of my life, several chapters at a time. And so I get a continuing daily education from it. And it would be hard for me to nail it down to just one quote. But the Bible is my favorite book. And the current favorite quote I have from it, I'll put it that way, is recognizable to some people. And it goes like this. Jesus told his disciples to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Now, the reason why this is my favorite quote, Paul, is because snakes can't see, and they also can't hear, and they have no arms and legs, and they really, in order to eat, they have to be very cautious and very slow about approaching their prey, especially because they can't tell the difference visually between a gerbil and a small gray stone. And that got me thinking as to why we would be advised to be wise as a creature that is deaf, dumb, mute, armless, and legless. Until you realize that snakes sense their prey by recognizing a heat signal. They have thermoreceptors on the top lip of their mouth, and that's how they can tell that a mouse or a rat is nearby. And of course, the spiritual implication of that is be very sensitive to the temperature of the conversation you're having with someone. You can have a ice cold conversation where somebody just doesn't want to have anything to do with you, or doesn't care if you live or die. Or you can have a heated conversation where passions are running very strong, either in a positive or negative light. Or you can have a lukewarm one where it seems sort of indifferent, could go either way. I've just been chewing on that one a lot recently, and it's really inspiring me to rethink how my interactions with other human beings, what's the temperature of every conversation I have.
I like that, and I like the part about the temperature too. I think that's a great hook.
Yeah, maybe I'll have a book to write about that one day.
There you go. Hey, I know a guy. Well, Paul, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
I have a website, Paul, called the Paul S, as in Simon, Edwards.com. And for your listeners, I'm going to create a special page. So we're going to have a URL that's going to be thepaulsedwards.com Get Published Podcast. So I will get that along to you for the show notes. And listeners who want to subscribe and find out more about me, I'm also available on social media under the Paul S. Edwards. So I got the same handle on all the major outlets there. But anybody who wants to sign up and subscribe, there is a free some coaching tools on there that I've used: a personal assessment, spouse survey, and a goals and dreams worksheet that are free to anybody who wants to use them.
And you also have a podcast as well, correct?
Yes. Hear some of my conversations with great influencers, thought leaders, experts, authors, and executives, and so forth and so on, at the Influencer Networking Secrets podcast, available on iTunes, Spotify, and everywhere else podcasts are sold for free.
All right. Well, Paul, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.